from a foreign source. White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley is our headliner. He joins us at 10:30 Eastern, half an hour from now, with new reaction.
He is yet again open to the idea of working with foreign governments to undermine the integrity of our elections.
Used to water ski. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith.
Hello, Sandra. Good to be with you. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn, in for Bill Hemmer. Jennifer Dulos, well, she vanished May 24th after dropping her kids off at school. Now the hunt for clues is intensifying this morning as dive teams comb the pond in the upscale suburb of Avon, Connecticut.
Laura Engel has been on this story from go. Laura, what are we learning now?
Hi, Sandra. Well, investigators were at the water skiing pond yesterday based on several tips received about the area, but apparently did not find anything. They were there all day. Now, this is the 20th day of search efforts to find the missing mother of five, which has brought together state and local investigators searching homes, parks, and a waste facility in Hartford for any sign of the 50-year-old or any evidence in this case. Police in New Canaan, where Jennifer Dulos lives, say they have now received over 550 tips and 80 videos submitted by the public in their request for any information. Yesterday, we saw who we believe to be a family member at Jennifer Dulos' rental home collecting personal items. This is the first time we've seen a family member at the house. Police say this is where they believe Jennifer was the victim of a serious physical assault and where they found DNA from Fotis Dulos, her estranged husband, mixed with Jennifer's blood on the kitchen faucet. Fotis Dulos, who has pled not guilty on hindering prosecution and tampering with evidence charges, was released on bond Tuesday after also making an appearance in family court over custody of his 5 children. They remain with Jennifer's mother for now as a judge considers the grandmother's request for temporary custody. In a new interview with NBC, Fotis Dulos' new attorney says his client has not been in contact with his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, who was also arrested on the same charges and is out on bond. He says that Fotis, quote, deeply loves her and wants nothing more than to call her, but says that is not a move he will let him make. Troconis has been seen talking with state investigators on this case. Pattis says he has heard that she has taken a polygraph test and denied having any information as to where Jennifer Dulos is. We will continue to monitor the situation. Sandra.
Laura Engel, the search continues. Thank you.
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong.
That's President Trump saying that he would want to hear what someone has to say about a campaign rival, even if it's a foreign source, calling opposition research a common political practice. Rich Edson live at the White House with the latest on this controversy. Hi, Rich.
Hey, good morning, Eric. And the president is defending those comments this morning. He says he meets with foreign governments and leaders all the time and that, quote, we talk about everything. Should I immediately call the FBI about these calls and meetings? How ridiculous. I would never be trusted again. With that being said, my full answer is rarely played by the fake news media. They purposely leave out the part that matters. Now, in that ABC interview, the president also rejected guidance from the FBI director, Christopher Wray, in which he said that any public official or campaign that's contacted by a foreign official about information that could influence the election, that the FBI would want to know about that.
This is somebody that said, we have information on your opponent. Oh, let me call the FBI. Give me a break. Life doesn't work that way.
The FBI director says that's what should happen.
The FBI director is wrong.
Democrats are jumping on the president's comments. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says, quote, the Russians attacked our elections and Donald Trump is giving them the green light to do it again. We can't stand by and just hope for the best. The Senate must join the House in passing H.R. 1 to protect our democracy. Now, following the release of the Mueller report, House Democrats continue their investigations into the 2016 election interference by the Russian government. Also yesterday, the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., spoke again to the Senate Intelligence Committee. He said his answers have remained unchanged from the second time that he spoke with them previously. Eric?
All right, Rich, thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Rich. Let's bring in America's Newsroom A-Team. Jessica Tarlov is here, a Fox News contributor. John Bussey from the Wall Street Journal and a Fox News contributor. And Charlie Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor and Fox News contributor. I know everyone at this table has a lot to say on this. So, John, why don't you start us off, naturally?
So you can't contribute to a campaign if you're a foreign government. There's laws against that. It's unclear what the president is saying, how much he doesn't want to get into this because he's afraid of delegitimizing the election of 2016, where there was Russian interference. And this is what's spelled out in the Mueller report. He's saying, look, if somebody comes along and offers me some information, am I going to turn it away? But the question is, what's the quid pro quo for that? Is the foreign government expecting something in return for once that individual is elected? It's a very slippery slope, particularly when you're saying that your FBI director is wrong.
So already the response on the left has been to further calls for impeachment based on the president's answer in this new interview. And obviously there's a different take on the right, Charlie. What is that?
Well, I mean, first of all, you know, if you listen to what he said is, yeah, I would go to the FBI if there's something wrong. Fine. As far as his having a dispute with his own FBI director, hey, this is terrific. This is open government. This is, you know, I don't know why anybody in the media gets upset about the fact that there is this open discord in the administration. But let's think about what he has come through over the past 2 or 3 years. You had Democrats paid for information from foreign governments, used it, used it foreign nationals in an attempt to rig the 2016 election, and then for the past 2 years they have used that information, that corrupted information, to try to discredit a duly elected president.
Jessica, what about that? You've got the fact that the Clinton campaign, the DNC, paid Perkins Coie, hired Fusion GPS, paid Christopher Steele, a British spy. Now you got George Papadopoulos saying he was set up by the Australian intelligence, the British intelligence, the Italian intelligence, all trying to set him up and plant this stuff out there.
I have a very low sympathy bar for George Papadopoulos in this. As far as the Steele dossier and hiring Christopher Steele is not a foreign government. He's an independent actor who's been trusted by Western governments that we work with constantly for decades here. What the president is saying is a direct violation of the criminal code, as John pointed out here. That is a very big deal. He also used the example of Norway, which is patently ridiculous. You're going to be talking about places like North Korea, China, Russia, people who hack us, who want to hurt us, and who want to interfere in our elections. He's also playing right into the narrative of impeachment hearings, first of all, and what came out of Mueller, that you would welcome information from a foreign hostile power. That's what Don Jr. did.
Okay.
That's
But so
what
you're condemning what Hillary Clinton, you're condemning what the Clinton
No, I'm saying that it isn't
where
getting,
they went out and actually sought that information
Christopher
from
Steele is not the Russian government. Christopher Steele had his sources, which were delineated in the report. Some of it ended up being true, some of it ended up not being true.
But Jessica, to Charlie's point, this is the right is using this as an opportunity to point out the hypocrisy. Our own Sean Hannity, in case you missed it, walked in like a rock star on Fox and Friends this morning.
He was on very early.
And he had this to say.
Over that, how could you not be outraged? Hillary Clinton literally empowered a foreign agent who produced a Russian a dossier full of Russian lies that was used to infiltrate our electoral process.
Yes, that was Sean on 12 hours early.
But also, not only was that information used to try to corrupt the 2016 election, but for the past 2 years, and when we know where the information came from, and we know that it's all bogus, that information has been used to discredit a duly elected president. And to me, that is the more astounding part of all of it.
I want to get this in here because we are learning, and John, I'll bring you in on this, that Senator Lindsey Graham has apparently said that the president's words here were a mistake. We're trying to effort that video for you if there is video of him saying that, but that would be the thoughts of Senator Lindsey Graham to that, you say?
Yeah, and the Attorney General has also said, look, if an intelligence service from a foreign government comes forward with information, that should be reported to the FBI. There's gradations of this, right? So it's unclear exactly what violates the criminal code. Taking a foreign contribution from Russia or from Norway would be some information from somebody within the government is a little unclear. There's efforts now within the Congress to make it very specifically against the law, but it's also a matter of judgment. Do you want the President of the United States encouraging other governments to provide him with information going into an election?
Elizabeth Warren took issue with it. She tweeted this. The hashtag Mueller report made it clear a foreign government attacked our 2016 elections to support Trump. Trump welcomed that help, and Trump obstructed the investigation. Now he said he'd do it all over again. It's time to impeach Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren, by the way, is rising in the polls over Bernie Sanders. A new Monmouth poll, Jessica, showing her ahead of Sanders in Nevada and trailing Biden 36 to her 19, with Sanders at 13.
Elizabeth Warren is the candidate that is surging right now. This has been going on for a few weeks. She's been making her case all over the country. She's held something like 90 town halls. She goes into areas that are full of Trump supporters. She talks about the opioid crisis. She has a plan for that. She has a plan for everything. And I think that people are looking at Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren as the two progressive rock stars here, and seeing that she is the one that has the real solid plans here. She's thought about it, and she's been walking the walk and talking the talk for decades here. It's very different than what's going on with Bernie. We saw him yesterday with that speech about what democratic socialism is, but when you look at his policies, they're not all that different from what Warren has out there, but they're more thorough, they're better researched, and frankly, I think she's a better campaigner. People forgot that. She's an awesome campaigner.
John, are people hungering for facts? Are they hungering for policy, some meat to put on the bones?
I think it's probably right. And so it's a fight on the left right now. Who's going to delineate the more progressive part of the Democratic Party, or the left-leaning part of the Democratic Party? And Elizabeth Warren is a policy wonk. She's got a lot of plans. She has a lot of proposals. She's out there with specifics. Whereas Bernie Sanders, also a very compelling figure to people who support the left part of the party, is really more of a rhetorician, and that might now be wearing thin after several years of this.
Can Joe Biden blunt this?
Well, Biden is playing to the center with wanting to acknowledge the importance of the left part of his party. He's not going to take on a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who's arguing some kind of obscure definition of democratic socialism. I mean, he's not going to wander down that road. He's going to play to the conservative Democrats and the centrists and independents, and frankly to moderate Republicans.
I mean, do you think it could come up between Biden and Warren? I mean, you've got a policy wonk there versus someone with all that experience, and that could really be a matchup.
Could entirely be so, and I think it'd be a substantive.
Yeah. You go back to that speech earlier this week where you had the president and you had Joe Biden in Iowa, and Joe Biden, ahead of his speech, we got his prepared remarks, and the headlines were out there that he was going to take on the president in a big way, and he gave that speech, and Rush Limbaugh was not impressed. Here's Rush.
He didn't meet the expectations. He didn't eviscerate Trump. He didn't even raise his voice. He didn't get all that passionate about it. This is not what people want. If you're going to eviscerate Trump, you better do it.
Because that was the headline out of that speech.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem like this sort of wind is rushing out of the Biden campaign. And of course, you know, when you look at people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren is kind of sort of Bernie Sanders in sheep's clothing. Bernie kind of comes off as a little bit angry. And this business, as Jess pointed out, of constantly talking and embracing the word socialism, that freaks people out. I think it freaks even Democrats out a little bit. And Elizabeth Warren, whose policies are basically the exact same thing, at least she has the sense, not socialism.
You know what else freaks people out that the left is using the word a lot? Impeachment. Look at this. Quinnipiac asked the question on impeachment, do you think Congress should begin the process to impeach President Trump, which could lead to his removal from office? Only 33% said yes. 61%, Jessica, responded no. 6% don't know.
Go figure. Nancy Pelosi is right with her strategy. Nancy Pelosi has her finger totally on the pulse of what's going on in the Democratic Party right now. She has Jerry Nadler further in line now, Hakeem Jeffries, the people that she needs to. Impeachment is something that will be slow.
You mentioned two people. Does she have her party in line?
Well, those are the ones responding to the polls, right? I mean, they're the ones that saying we can't afford to have impeachment hearings. The Senate will never impeach him, right? So we're going to go through this in the House. He can fundraise off of this. He can campaign about it. I'm a duly elected president. I haven't done anything wrong. It was a witch hunt. Mueller exonerated me. They're coming after me.
She's clearly a genius behind the levers of power in Congress.
She is a genius.
But the idea that she's somehow sort of mainstream is kind of hysterical.
No, she's paying attention to where the party is right now on the issue.
The party is impeachment, right?
No,
I mean,
it's 59 Democrats, which is a minority of House representatives. In 2018, we won 40 seats, 35 of them that we flipped. those are moderate Democrats, part of this new Democrat coalition. Not one of them is for impeachment. So if the president keeps going out there and saying, oh, foreign governments, come on in, that's cool, I'm not going to tell the FBI, you're going to get more and more people that are saying, well,
to this point also, I mean, to this point on impeachment and the extreme of impeachment, look, Rush Limbaugh is a popular conservative opinionator, right? He's got a dog in this hunt. He's pro-Trump, and he wants to take the air out of Bernie Sanders' race. So he's going to be critical of it. But you have to ask yourself about Sanders' Biden's race. You have to ask yourself about Biden's strategy on this. How violent does he want to be in the language of anti-Trump? How much velocity does he want to have around that when there is an appeal to moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans and centrists? He's going to make his position known, but is that going to be his singular point, and is he going to constantly be harping on it? Probably not.
Also, just to add, Biden is up 30 points with independents. Trump picked up independents in the 2016 election. He's 15 points ahead of other Democrats in that category. Joe Biden is running against the president, not Republicans as a whole.
Okay, we've got to leave it there. You did not disappoint, A-Team. Thank you.
We'll talk about it more in the green room.
Breaking news now to the attempted murder of David Ortiz. We're getting some brand new information and some brand new surveillance video showing the moment attackers
have happened, but confirmed it was at a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. Gooding is expected to turn himself in to police as early, we're told, as today. And there's terrifying new surveillance video of that attack on legendary Red Sox slugger David Ortiz. As we are now learning more about the shooting in the Dominican Republic, the alleged gunman and 5 accomplices are now in police custody. Authorities say the men were offered just under $8,000 to carry out the assassination. We're also learning 2 of the suspects could have a connection to crimes right here in our country. Rafael Fierro Cruz, the alleged gunman, reportedly wanted for 2 robberies in New Jersey, and another suspect still at large, Luis Alfredo Rivas Claes, could be linked to a recent shooting that happened in Pennsylvania. As for Ortiz, he is in intensive care at a hospital now in Boston, and he is said to be improving. Our thoughts for Big Papi.
I suspect that a lot of people in this country would be delighted to pay more in taxes if they had comprehensive health care as a human right.
Senator Bernie Sanders there defending democratic socialism, saying his policies are popular and that Americans would have no problem paying more taxes to fund them. Joining us, money man Charles Payne. I'm not sure I've ever heard anybody, a fan of higher taxes, Charles, but he makes that case.
I haven't either. Sometimes you'll hear billionaires say that kind of stuff, even as they're giving all of their money to a fund or a charity, right? Not Uncle Sam. No one wants to pay higher taxes. So, I thought Bernie really fell flat yesterday. He had the big stage. He had a chance to reset his campaign. Bits and pieces of his platform are being snatched from him by his rivals. Elizabeth Warren is rocketing higher. Mayor Pete's rocketing. It just feels like he was really, really floundering. And then today, here's the interesting news. In Venezuela, they're coming up with new denominations for the notes because inflation is so high. They're going to have a 50,000 bolivars, 50,000. 40,000 is equal to $8 in America. That's their minimum wage for a month. I mean, think about that as you're pushing socialism. That's what they're doing in that country.
Well, he's probably not pushing Venezuelan socialism here, but he is using that word. He's very proud of it.
He's very
proud.
He's
not a Democrat, an independent. How do you think that will resonate with the non-millionaires and the billionaires out there, people in the heartland, the rest of us, when he says they're coming to us to pay more taxes?
Well, nobody wants to pay more taxes, and the word socialism, it's beyond, has more than just negative economic connotations. You look at the carnage that has happened in the wake of socialism, the human carnage, the deaths. It's interesting. In his speech, he starts off talking about oligarchs. Guess what? Socialism breeds oligarchs, right? That's exactly what you get in socialistic societies.
Ari Fleischer was really strong on Special Report last night. He had a similar message on socialism. Here's Ari Fleischer.
He said elsewhere in that speech that socialism is for compassion, justice, and love. Well, I don't know what nation on earth socialism has ever achieved those objectives. Freedom achieved those objectives. What socialism has brought to tens of millions around the world instead is oppression, injustice, and scarcity. This is what socialism delivers.
When Bernie Sanders says those things, he sounds like a naive college student. Like, it looks good on paper, it looks fair on paper, And maybe, you know, he spent his honeymoon in the USSR. I mean, it just maybe he believes it so much that he's blinded to history and current day events. And let me tell you, even though he won't say Venezuela, he doesn't ever say anything negative about Venezuela either.
But he defended this. He was on CNN last night. Let's listen to what he had to say.
There is a trade-off, but at the end of the day, I think that most people will believe they're going to be better off when their kids have educational opportunities without out-of-pocket expenses, when they have health care as a human right, when they have affordable housing, when they have decent retirement security. I think most Americans will understand that that is a good deal.
I mean, he is hitting the areas of worry for many of us.
He is hitting the areas of worry, but, you know, and listen, this goes back to FDR, right? The 4 freedoms. And the last freedom I've always had a problem with was the idea that we should be shielded from the freedom of want. Want is what motivates us to do things. When we want to achieve something, we work hard for it and we achieve it. Want is why we have the internet. Want is why we have innovation. Want is why families change their lives from generation to generation. He wants, like FDR in this speech, to take away that and somehow the government to give it to us, and maybe we'll pay a few bucks extra. Well, guess what? It's very expensive in the places that they do have anything akin to this.
Republicans and Democrats in this House Ways and Means Committee hearing yesterday, they went head-to-head on Medicare for All. Here's the way Ilhan Omar describes Medicare for All. She did this in a tweet. She said, high-quality health care, dental, vision, and long-term care, no co-payments, deductibles, or cost sharing, and end to profiteering in health care. Republican Kevin Brady took on Medicare for All in that hearing yesterday, and he made his case.
We will not stand by and let Democrats seize your health care, seize your choices, and seize your control over life and death health care decisions under Medicare for All. When you pull the curtain back on Medicare for All, the truth is staring at you. Many Americans will pay more, wait longer for health care, and get worse care than you receive now.
We will not stand by, said Kevin Brady.
He's going to fight now, and guess what? There are going to be some Democrats also. They won't be as vocal as Kevin Brady, but not everyone in the Democratic Party is even on board with this particular idea. There is something about the free enterprise system. There is something about the idea that when the governments around the world, by the way, you talk about Canada, you talk about the UK, but the waiting times are extraordinarily long for simple operations, and for more complex ones, people who can afford it come to America to have them done.
You know, I'm looking at the Dow, Charles. What's the Dow doing?
It's relatively flat. We were up about 112 points. Interesting. We're sort of meandering, if you will. We got a little bit of a bump in oil from the explosions in the Gulf. We had some good retail numbers, Restoration Hardware, Lululemon, they're up pretty good today. But we're into a holding pattern. Everyone's kind of wondering what's the next move from the Federal Reserve, and of course, what's going to happen next with respect to China and trade.
All
right, Charles.
All right.
We'll see you this afternoon on NBN. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Well, a few moments ago, we had a technical snafu. We aired a clip of Democratic Congressman John Lewis of Georgia, and we mistakenly labeled him as Oversight Committee Chairman Elijah Cummings. Of course, we regret that error and apologize. Well, the battle over the 2020 census is escalating after the House Oversight Committee votes to hold Attorney General William Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in contempt. What's next in this tug of war?
Plus, will President Trump gearing up to meet with President Xi later this month at the G20? What will happen with that? What he says China has to do to end the tariffs. White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley will join us as our headliner next. Contact the FBI if he thought, quote, there was something wrong. White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley joins us now from the North Lawn. Hogan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Hogan.
Good morning.
As you have probably seen, the reaction to those words of the president, Democrats are using it to further call for the impeachment of this president based on what he said there. Does the president stand by that or want to change any of those words, or is that what he said?
Look, I wish that the media would take the time to look at the full clip. I was standing just feet away from the president in his exchange with George Stephanopoulos. It was very clear. The president said if there was wrongdoing, of course he'd turn it over to the FBI. That's absolutely ridiculous. But let's talk about how we got here and what the media continues to focus on. Democrats are going down these ridiculous rabbit holes. They've been doing this now for multiple years, trying to attack then candidate Donald Trump and now the president. I mean, this information was gotten by the crooked Hillary campaign. They're the ones who solicited and paid for information from a foreign entity in Christopher Steele, who got fake information from Russia, and they used it to weaponize an entire campaign against this president, first as a candidate and now as the president of the United States. It's absolutely ridiculous that we're not having this conversation. This is how we got here.
I think,
and everyone wants to focus on a non-meeting with Donald Trump, the Donald Trump campaign, rather, in Trump Tower that lasted a few seconds. It's absolutely ridiculous.
So just a couple of things. I hear you say he would, of course, go to the FBI. But, of course, if you look at the exact words of the president, he said maybe go to the FBI if there was something wrong there. We're seeing reaction from Capitol Hill. Senator Lindsey Graham has responded to the president's comments, and he just said this.
What are the implications of hearing the president of the United States saying it's okay to accept foreign dirt from about an opponent?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake of law. I don't want to send a signal to encourage this, and I hope my Democrat colleagues will be equally offended by the fact that this actually did happen in 2016, where a foreign agent was paid for by a political party to gather opposition research. All those things are wrong.
How does the White House respond to that, Hogan? He called it a mistake of law, the senator said.
Well, look, the president was very clear. This was opposition research. It was one conversation, and that was the end of it. What Lindsey Graham did point out was that the fact the Hillary Clinton campaign actually paid for information, got it, and it was used by the FBI, weaponized, and we now know at the upper echelons of the FBI, at the very top, with the Strzok's and the Pages and the Comeys and the McCabe's of the world, who now either were fired or obviously resigned in disgrace, they were the ones who weaponized that agency against this president with disproven, discredited, and debunked information at this point. We now know this. The question really is, how do we get here in the first place? Not how some ridiculous meeting, as I said, that just lasted a brief amount of time. The president got no information from Russia. It was the Hillary Clinton campaign that actually used the information, and the FBI actually weaponized it against us because of the corruption at the upper echelons. We now know with the text messages exactly who's to blame here.
Yeah, do you think the criticism is unfair? Look, Washington Post last year, I dug out this article. Brian Fallon was a top DOJ official. He was also the chief press secretary for the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016, and he said this: "If I had handed it last fall, meaning the dossier, I would have no problem passing it along and urging reporters to look into it. I probably would have volunteered to go to Europe myself to try and verify it." There you have an official of the Clinton campaign saying, "I'm going to go to Europe myself to go get this."
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you pointed that out. The hypocrisy here knows no bounds from the Democrats and from the media. They allowed the Clinton campaign to do this. They now know some of this information, and they're still going after this president, who, by the way, after the Robert Mueller report came out, he walked to that podium and he closed the investigation, he closed the case, he even closed his own office and said this is over and done with. There were no indictments around that meeting. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's been no collusion, no corruption, no obstruction. We now know that for a fact, and the media continues to nitpick and take things out of context, this president says, instead of focusing on how we got here in the first place, which was nefarious actions from the crooked Hillary Clinton campaign.
Final thoughts on that, because we have other things we want to get to with you. But in that interview, the interviewer, Stephanopoulos, did point out the FBI director, Christopher Wray, has said campaigns should reach out to the Bureau if they are contacted by a foreign entity. Does the president think the FBI director is wrong on that?
Well, he said he would do both. I was standing right just steps from him, and I don't know if that clip's actually been played. I'd be surprised if it was, because Lord knows we actually give the president the full context he deserves. He was very clear. If he got information and it was nefarious or ill-gotten in any way and there was wrongdoing, he would absolutely take it to the FBI. And for the media to try to push this another way is absolutely ridiculous.
The president responded, the FBI director is wrong.
Right, but he first of all, I think we were talking about James Comey at the time, and we all know James Comey sure is wrong after being a convicted liar and leaker. So that's what the president was talking about, but he made the point he would send this information to the FBI if it was in any way wrongdoing in the process.
If a foreign entity does contact the campaign or the White House with dirt on somebody, would you go to the FBI and turn that over?
Well, the president said he would do that if there was wrongdoing. That's a question for the campaign, obviously, but the president was very clear here, and for the media to go down this rabbit hole is just ridiculous.
All right, now moving on to the House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler. He announced yesterday that former Trump confidant Hope Hicks, who I should point out is the EVP and Chief Communications Director for Fox Corp, will testify before his committee as part of this investigation into whether or not President Trump obstructed the Mueller investigation. What is the response from the president on that?
Well, listen, the president told everyone to cooperate. This is the most transparent president in history. He gave millions of documents over to Robert Mueller and their report, and there is no way that Jerry Nadler is going to find something out about Hope Hicks that Robert Mueller couldn't. Again, this is not oversight. This is overreach. They're going after people of this administration, trying to shame this president. This is over and done with. And just because you don't like the outcome of the game doesn't mean you get to play it over. That's what Jerry Nadler repeatedly is trying to doing to this president. It's stupid and pointless.
They're also trying to citing contempt for both Wilbur Ross and what do you think about that? And William Barr?
Look, right, because heaven forbid the administration find out when we actually administer a census to find out who's in this country, whether we can ask or not someone's an American citizen. That was the norm for decades. The real question isn't why are we trying to find out who are citizens in this country and who aren't. The real question is why don't Democrats care? They're the ones who are for open borders. They're the ones who refuse to close loopholes to protect the American people, instead to protect those here illegally and unlawfully. That's a question that no one is asking of Democrats right now, and we deserve the right to know who's in this country, who are citizens, and that's all this is about. But look, the Supreme Court is going to decide this in a couple of days, and quite frankly, this is just Democrats trying to color the court, but they won't fall for that.
All right. Will the administration abide by any court decision?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Okay. Real quick, President Xi and the president meeting at the end of the month at the G20, that's still on?
It looks like we're moving in that direction. The president said yesterday he was going to meet with several world leaders. There's a lot to be done. The president's trying to get a deal done with trade on China, and hopefully that gets done there at the G20.
All right, we're up against a deadline here, too, Hogan Gidley. Thank you for joining us live from the White House.
Thanks, Hogan.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Now is the time for social media companies to put in place policies to protect users from this kind of misinformation. Not in 2021, after viral deepfakes have polluted the 2020 elections. By then, it will be too late.
Have you seen those so-called deepfake videos? They are unbelievable. Now they're going viral. The most recent one, take a look. This altered video of Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. The danger they pose is an issue the House Intelligence Committee is looking at today on Capitol Hill. And our Jillian Turner is live in Washington with the latest. It's a really frightening and chilling new phenomenon. Hi, Jillian.
It is, Eric and Sandra. So the House Intelligence Committee's hearing on AI is underway right now. They're looking at the threat artificial intelligence poses to U.S. national security, and they're talking about just how quickly this technology is improving. So quick, it's even hard for regulators to keep up. Now, this, as you mentioned, as a new viral video is showing the world this morning that not even America's big tech titans are immune to the threat of deepfakes. Take a look at this doctored video of Mark Zuckerberg making waves on Twitter and Insta.
Imagine this for a second. One man with total control of billions of people's stolen data, all their secrets, their lives, their futures.
He didn't actually say any of that. Now, this video is triggering a whole new round of questions about what and how much fake content should be allowed to stay up on social media platforms. Instagram says for now it's got no plans to remove the Zuckerberg clip. Just last month, Facebook got hit with criticism after it allowed a crudely altered video of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to stay up, even the president sharing it with his followers. It's rare to see lawmakers and experts in agreement at these Intel hearings these days, but today they're in lockstep. They both say the time for action was yesterday.
It's great that we're here now, ahead of 2020, but these technologies have been in open development for several years now.
Thinking ahead to 2020 and beyond, one does not need any great imagination to envision even more nightmarish scenarios that would